Okay, so we are going to do a translation. You need to label your patty paper. We're going to be using 2 sheets of patty paper for this particular translation. So you're going to write the number 1 in the corner.
Pretty.
Okay? Now, take your second sheet of patty paper and label it number 2. Right in the corner so it's out of the way. So, on patty paper 1 is where you're going to draw your first triangle. You need to use your straight edge to make sure you are drawing the triangle nice and neat. Don't make the triangle too big, but don't make the triangle too small either. Okay, so you can choose whatever corner you would like, but probably one of these would be best. Okay, I'm gonna use this right here and put a dot right there. So you have a point on the top of your triangle. Now you're gonna draw a ray from that point outward. So you will have something like this, and it's not a ray until we put the arrows on it. And then we need to put a point on the ray somewhere. I'm going to put mine right here. Okay? So now, this is what you should have on patty paper 1. You should have a triangle with a dot on the top of the triangle and a ray with a dot someplace on there. Okay? Now take patty paper number 2 and you're going to trace exactly what you have on patty paper 1 onto patty paper number 2. So here's patty paper number 2. It's blank, and when you put it right on top of patty paper number 1, you can see through it, so you can trace it. So line it up and trace it. Use your straight edge so that your lines are still nice and straight. If it moves, you just line it back up. Okay, and then trace your ray and the dots on the ray as well. Okay, so now you have 2 sheets of paper that are identical, 2 sheets of patty paper that are absolutely identical, okay? What I'd like for you to do is take patty paper number 2 and place it under patty paper number 1. And line them back up again, okay? Now we're going to perform the actual translation, and the translation is a slide. And what we want to do is construct a second triangle that is congruent to this triangle. And so what we're going to do is take the second paper, and you see the dot that we've created at the top, and we're going to slide it down until the triangle that's on patty paper 2 lines up with the dot on our ray on patty paper 1, and the rays match up. So this is what you have. Can you see that? Let me zoom in a little bit. You see that? And you're going to trace this triangle here onto patty paper number 1. I'm just going to dash the lines in so you can see the difference between the 2 triangles themselves. And you probably should use the straight edge, but for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to go ahead and just dash it in. Okay, so you remove patty paper number 2. So now this is what you have left over on patty paper number 1. You have 2 congruent triangles. And we know they're congruent because we use the translation to create this second triangle. So let's give our triangles a name. We have 2 triangles that are congruent, so we need to write that they're congruent. Okay? So at the top of your paper, you're going to write that triangle. Let's just call them triangle ABC and triangle XYZ. So you can start naming it the way you want to, but I'm going to start from this corner here. Triangle A, triangle B, and this was triangle C. And we're going to write that up here, triangle A, B, C. And that's going to be congruent to triangle X, Y, Z. And if you went through the notes, you realize that you can label the triangles the same exact way using the letters. So if this is A, then this triangle should be X. So this corner would be X. And this would be Y. And here would be Z. Okay? So now you have 2 triangles and they're labeled. Now because we have 2 triangles, we will be able to list their corresponding 2 triangles and they're congruent. We can show their corresponding parts. You learned that in the notes. Segment AB here is corresponding to segment XY. We could also look at the name. We should also look at the name and be able to also determine that AB is congruent to XY. So let's write out those congruency statements. So first we're going to write out the corresponding segments. Segment AB is going to be congruent and corresponding to segment XY. Segment BC, so that's this side of the triangle here, is going to be congruent and corresponding to segment YZ. And then segment CA is going to be congruent to segment ZX. Okay? So these will be your corresponding segments. So you can probably turn your paper a little bit. And we're going to call these the corresponding segments. Okay? So now that we have the corresponding segments, we also want to look for the corresponding angles. All right? And so we just are basically matching up the vertices. A with X, B with Y, C with Z. Again, following in the name, they go together. So we're going to write corresponding angles. Angle A is congruent and corresponding to angle X. Angle B is congruent and corresponding to angle Y. And angle C is congruent to angle Z. Okay, so those would be your corresponding angles. Now something else to remember is that in the translation, you have corresponding vertices. And the distance between corresponding vertices should also be congruent. So we're talking about the distance between B and Y, the distance between A and X, and the distance between C and Z. Those should all be the same. So with your straight edge or your ruler, you need to measure those distances to see if yours is the same. If they're just about the same, that means that you did your translation just perfectly. And if I measure mine out, use the centimeter side or use whatever you have at the time. And it looks like I'm going to get about 4.9. Okay? And I'm going to measure here. Again, about 4.9. about 4.9. So then I can write this out, that my segments AX, BY, and CZ, that those should all be the same. And for me, that was 4.9 centimeters. Okay? So in a translation, the distance between corresponding vertices or corresponding parts is equal. So you may want to write that somewhere. Okay? And that's it.